Well, welcome everybody from wherever you might be joining us from. We've got a fantastic interview today, a bit of a debrief about what COSBOA is all about and what our roundtables achieve. They are proudly brought to you by Commonwealth Bank, the Friends of Small Business. Now, I wanted to tell you guys about what the roundtables do for members, and it's a really great way of debriefing and getting a bit of information out there about what COSBOA is all about. But I'd like to welcome, first of all, our chair, our illustrious chair, Matthew Addison, who's also from Institute of Certified Bookkeepers. Thanks for chatting to COSBOA.
Greetings, Alexi, and greetings, members, and thank you for allowing me to join in this conversation around COSBOA, the roundtables, and the various items that were discussed recently.
Now, the roundtables have been going on for quite a while. Can you tell us a little bit about why they started?
The roundtables actually predate my involvement directly in COSBOA, but during COVID in particular, what we found is the roundtables were a great way for the members to join together, hear from each other, hear from each other's industries, hear from Peter when he was in the role as CEO, and to share an understanding and help form the policies and the thoughts that COSBOA should have as we advocate for small business. And it became a really key communication point, so much so that we had the regulators saying, oh, could we come along to the roundtable and have a listen? So they heard it firsthand. And increasingly then we also had some ministers say, oh, we'd like to come along and have a bit of a listen as well. A great interaction, achieving one of the purposes of COSBOA, which is that interaction of our associations as members with the regulators, with the ministers, with the departments, and having that interaction.
And I presume the agenda would have been quite timely. So it's whatever's going on in that week. I know from the last couple that I've been doing since I started my role as CEO, that the agenda tends to come out quite a last minute. Is that deliberate? Is it because we're in this crazy, evolving, changing world for small business at the moment?
I think it is a sign of the times right now. Change continues to change and continues to be here. Our world continues to evolve, but right at the moment, it's very quick. So even when we look at what we discussed only last Friday, each of those topics has developed in the last 5 days to be in a slightly different spot and a slightly different perspective. So yes, it evolved with the needs. The agenda would be pre-thought, but it would also be quite fluid because it's a real chance for the COSBOA team, yourself and the policy people and the development people, to hear from the members what is actually hitting them, what's hitting their membership, what's hitting small business. So it's a great interaction vehicle as well.
Exactly. And isn't it great to be having the regulators, the administrators and all those people really wanting to listen in and get that real-time information because, like you said, things are changing so fast. It's valuable to them as well. And it really shows the power of COSBOA because we're so tapped into our members who are so tapped into small business that we're able to get that information to them so fast. So, look, it's a really exciting process to be part of. And you're absolutely right. Whatever is said at that roundtable is gathered up and scooped up and used as part of our policy and advocacy positions on lots of different aspects. And often it's hard to squeeze in what's going on in a week or in a month for small businesses. I know they were happening more regularly during the height of COVID, or I think now is also the height of COVID, but, it's about getting that information in a timely manner as well. So let's talk about who presented at the August 2021 roundtable, which we're here to talk about today. So we had the ACCC come and chat to us. What were they talking to us about?
This particular ACCC discussion was more about the online retail marketplaces. So ACCC is currently doing a review of the Googles, the Amazons, the Catches, the Kogans, the eBays, looking at the digital platforms and going, how much power do they have? How much influence? What impact are they having on small businesses and small businesses' ability to sell into the world?
That's right, because when we think about the ways that we interact with these guys, it's a marketing tool, it's a sales tool, it's even a hiring tool as well. It's a way that we interact with our workers, as well as, our families in a personal world as well. So there's lots of stuff mixed up with this, but in particular, it's about how it's used as a sales platform as well, and that marketing tool. So what did the ACCC tell us about, and what are they hoping to hear back from small business during this sort of research gathering exercise?
As you mentioned, it's really a research gathering exercise in the first phases, where they're wanting to understand from small business, who do they use? Where do they use? I personally hear different views of whether people are actually selling through Facebook, or whether they're going more to what we would call the online shop type environments. And it appears it's across all brands. It's in multiple dimensions. So part of that is the ACCC getting a real sense of the lay of the land. Where does business sell through? What's the impact of selling through the different channels? Are there any of those channels that are particularly dominant, or they sit in I think the term was the must-have. If you're going to sell a product, you have to be in that environment. I'm tempted again to say we've all seen how the online marketplaces are changing and evolving and getting even attached to finance products and things. And I believe the ACCC is really interested in all those types of interactions as well.
Yeah, and that's right, because it's the Australian Consumer and Competition Commission. So they're looking at the way that we interact with, I guess, the platforms and making it fair and equitable. Is that what this is all about?
I think it's fair and equitable, yes. Is there any anti-competitive behaviour going on? Is there any power that sits with one that might be negatively impacting not another, but negatively impacting the ability of small business to fairly sell into the marketplace?
And we had a really good question from one of our members asking about the fact that if you host an event with one platform, such as Eventbrite, and then you go to advertise it on another platform that also does events called Facebook, then lo and behold, you don't get as many hits as you would otherwise if you were using Facebook. Magic. So I guess that could be construed as anti-competitive. Is that sort of like one of the examples they might be seeking from small business?
I think the example you give is the algorithms behind the platforms. Are they designed in a way to adversely impact some and positively impact others? So your example is a good one where, frankly, I'd be liking the ACCC to go and have a look and go, you know what, there is some interesting behaviour going on here, because of what is evident is a priority being given to those that favour one channel over a different channel. So, yep, I think you've sort of nailed where the direction goes.
Excellent. So the ACCC at the end of that great presentation, they were asking all of our members and anybody who's listening to this as well to have a check out their website. What we might do is include those links along with this podcast, so you can also give your opinion, your thoughts and examples of what you think they're after, talking about different methods of persuasion and competition and questionable actions, where you as a small business owner might like to contribute to that discussion. So we will include those links. Now, Matthew, after that, we had our usual chat about what's going on in the small business ecosystem, and the big ticket item at the moment when it comes to small businesses and lockdowns and coming out of it and where we need to be in 12 months' time is all about that question about vaccines and having the conversation with your workers and having the conversation with your customers. And it's a real tricky minefield, which, we're learning about in terms of where the liabilities sit and where small businesses sit in amongst all of these pieces of legislation and how hard it is for them to navigate it. So we had our former chair, Mark McKenzie from ACAPMA, come and tell us about this IR panel that we've just recently started, an expert panel for COSBOA, bringing together all these fantastic, knowledgeable people in the space of IR. And they've come up with a policy that largely captures what COSBOA's policy is around vaccinations. Do you want to talk me through what Mark highlighted and what's so great about this document that might give our members a little bit of framework on how they need to operate in this space?
So 2 steps there. Let me just backtrack into the expert panels concept that you've raised there.
Oh, yeah, good point, because we want to explain to everyone what we're doing in that regard too, yeah.
Where COSBOA has gone and the strengths of COSBOA is in its membership and touch points. And coming into the board nearly a year ago, and now with my role as chair, one of the questions I asked is, how are we drawing on all of that power and expertise? And one of the ways we see that is a great way for our members to interact, but quite specifically on a topic, is this formation of a knowledge area or an expert panel. So IR has been hot to trot. It's been hot to trot for a number of years. A lot of work was done last year with what became a group of members that were able to dedicate significant time, resource and expertise into it. And that led to this year's formation of the IR expert panel that Mark is chairing. And that IR expert panel in their agenda recently had a look at the vaccinations and started drafting up what could be the COSBOA advocacy position or vaccination policy, listening to all the conversations that are going on, having a consideration of the IR complications with what might happen to an employer should they mandate or should they not mandate vaccinations. And that opened up the discussion and the tabling of a draft policy that we discussed at the roundtable. We worked through the wording and the members seemed very supportive of what was tabled as that vaccination policy.
And that's a great example of a way that we formulate policy with all of our members in mind as well. I think that that's one of the strengths, as you mentioned, of COSBOA is drawing on those expert panels, producing a body of work that really helps to inform all of our members, and then seeking advice from them as well to just tweak it and refine it and make it a really ideal document that they can access and pass on to their small business members themselves. It's a really valuable document, I think, and I'd encourage anybody who's listening to this to check it out on the COSBOA website. It's now been published along with a little bit of an explainer. But broadly, what it talks about is an encouragement rather than an enforcement approach. And I guess it helps small businesses to navigate what you need to do and how those conversations should go. Does it answer all the questions, Matthew, or are we still waiting for a little bit more information to come out of the government, in your opinion?
Now, there's an ambition, Alexi, answering all the questions about vaccines in the workplaces. That's quite an ambition.
In one page.
In one page. So, look, I don't believe it answers all the questions, but it sets a direction for the conversations. And it sets a direction for the conversations and, if you like, some of the call-outs upon government and upon the regulators to help small business. But it gives an indication to small business about a direction they should go. So it calls out that we recommend small business people encourage their staff to obtain a COVID vaccination. Notice we didn't use the word mandate in there, but encourage staff. Now, we could go into a long discussion about vaccines and the ins and outs and why it is important for Australia at the moment, or could
which we should say we all agree it's very, very important and needs to happen so we can get out of lockdown for sure.
And it also, where the policy develops to, is saying to small business people, create a policy that deals with vaccines that includes provisions about paid leave to get the vaccination. It talks about whether you allocate sick leave for the reactions to the vaccination, or if there's no entitlement to sick leave, what else do we do? It creates a provision for it. Do we allow, and this is part of the discussion that has to happen between an employer and their employees, allowing vaccination exemption on a case-by-case basis, where somebody for a medical reason or other reason wants to really not be vaccinated, well, then that needs to be considered. But what we do is we really strongly encourage the discussions to happen. positive about vaccinations, positive that it's a direction for small business in Australia, but very positive about needing to have the discussions.
Yeah, look, it's certainly a great document that gives a real framework to help small businesses and for our members, the professional associations, to give that guidance. And really that's what COSBOA aims to achieve, is to provide a little bit of framework for each of these complicated policy settings that we find ourselves in, and aspects that we're continually trying to advocate for as well, always giving a small business lens on a new piece of policy or a new direction that the government is taking, for instance, and reminding them that, you know, small businesses are paramount in all policy. That's what I've discovered as newly appointed CEO, is there's not a single government department out there that we don't have a touch point in, which means that we need to be part of those discussions at all times and give that small business voice. And that's certainly, in my opinion, what COSBOA's power is, and the wonderful legacy that Peter brought with him. Look, I just wanted to say thank you for this chat about the roundtable. It's fascinating. I'm looking forward to having these chats each month. Afterwards, we'll be publishing a short podcast which kind of gives you a bit of a debrief and a communique about what happens at those roundtables. As I mentioned before, these are proudly brought to you by the Commonwealth Bank, and we're very pleased to be partnering with them in this great piece of communication. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us today.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for the chance.
And we'll chat to you all next month. Have a great month, everybody. This year, the Commonwealth Bank is proud to partner with the Council of Small Business Organisations Australia to bring you this series of insightful podcasts. Each month, regulators, advocates and Corporate Australia and COSBOA's Industry Association members hold roundtables to work together to fight for small businesses. Get the inside story on what's happening to protect and promote small business in Australia as it happens. Welcome everybody for a unique interview experience in these unique times we find ourselves in. My name is Alexi Boyd, Interim CEO of COSBOA, the Council of Small Business Organisations Australia, and today I'm speaking to Matt Comyn, the CEO of Commonwealth Bank and the Chair of the Australian Banking Association. We're going to be chatting about the assistance the Australian banking sector is providing to small businesses right now around the country, and how the banking sector is working to listen and support small businesses in this time of crisis. We'll also be discussing how the banking sector themselves have pivoted, just like small businesses, to serve their customers better and look after their own staff. Thanks for joining COSBOA, Matt.
Thanks very much, Lexi. Great to be here.
So let's talk firstly about your role, not just the CEO of CommBank, but also as the chair of ABA. Now, you've been at the forefront of navigating COVID impacts and the support government and the banking sector have been putting in place to provide for small businesses. Honestly, are the banks doing enough to support small business, and what's happening out there, in your opinion?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we are, and we're certainly trying to, and there's been a lot of work done, both obviously within the Commonwealth Bank, but also across the broader industry, and there is substantial support available. But I also say that against the backdrop of, it is very challenging for many businesses, particularly in small businesses, and I think irrespective of what level of support might be available from governments and or banks, there's no question that some people will be disproportionately impacted. And so I think for us, part of what we continue to do is, reach out proactively to customers, talk about the packages that are available, but be prepared to be, customise or tailor those solutions as well. And I think we're going to go through a period of ongoing uncertainty, and we've got to keep pushing ourselves about whether there's any more that we can be doing. But we've certainly tried to act swiftly and put very substantial support and flexibility in place for businesses, and particularly focused on small business.
I think that's what COSBOA is realising as well, is that we need a lot of tailored support packages. It's not enough to just roll out a support for X number of employees or this particular situation or you're this size business. But small business is so different and unique, not only in their structure, but what they do, how they deal with their employees. It's almost like these support packages need to be tailored with the small business end user in mind. Is that the approach that will work, do you think, for government, given that that's kind of the approach that CBA is doing?
Yes, and I guess within reason, if you talk about it from purely a government perspective, I mean, having been somewhat involved and certainly close enough to see how much work went into the development of JobKeeper, it was really done in about 7 days. As you would appreciate, trying to get a solution for millions of people and businesses is really challenging. And so I think it's hard, depending on the scale, to customise it, obviously at an individual or very tailored level. I think financial institutions, we have an advantage because we tailor a little bit more in certain industries. For example, obviously in construction, hospitality businesses, and we've seen the impacts of the pandemic be felt, very unevenly. And so I think it's good to have broad-based support in place. I think it's good to give people confidence and assurance about the sorts of options that are available. But realistically, there also has to be a degree of flexibility to be able to support and acknowledge the fact that some businesses do require different support at different times. We're actually talking to businesses at the moment that haven't needed any financial support over the past 16 months. So, clearly it is being felt unevenly. And I guess particularly the case in the Sydney lockdowns at the moment.
One of the advantages of JobKeeper was the fact that it meant that there was quite a lot of money flowing through the economy, and it was a great stimulus because the workers were the end recipients of that. Is that, in your opinion, one of the best ways to approach stimulus, is to keep that money going through the economy so that when we bounce back, that money and those funds are available for spending and people can focus on small businesses again?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at the way a lot of the support packages were designed, it's obviously to, as you said, keep money flowing through the economy, also recognising, some parts of the economy that you target, it will turn directly into expenditure, which stimulates other parts of the economy. And I think many of the, wage subsidy schemes like JobKeeper, one of the principal tenets of that as well was trying to make sure there was the attachment between employee and employer. That was obviously a huge fear at the start of COVID about what the impact would be and how many people would lose their jobs and how long it might take for the economy and the labour market to recover. And I think that's one of the things that is, pleasantly surprised, I'd say, every forecaster in Australia is how quickly the labour market has recovered. And so I think it should give us a lot of hope on the other side of these lockdowns and, substantial progress in the vaccine. There really is, I think, much more light at the end of the tunnel than perhaps there was, a year and a bit ago when there was a lot more uncertainties. But I think everyone's acutely conscious of how important it is to try and maintain both that direct support and for employees to feel connected to the businesses that they're a part of.
So you've been really vocal in your support of the vaccine rollout and how important it is to get the economy back on track. What practical things is CommBank doing to help facilitate it nationally and therefore support the entire community?
Yeah, the simple answer would be we're prepared to do anything that will be helpful. As you were part of the Treasurers Roundtable, I think we've certainly shared a few ideas bilaterally with the government. Things are simple, which, obviously I think just about every employer is doing at the moment. Paid leaves for people to go and get the vaccine, making it easy. We've brought in experts to be able to answer questions for our teams. We're a large business, so we've got the resources to be able to draw on, respiratory specialists and infectious disease specialists to get sort of answers, because there has been a lot of, I think, questions in the broader community about the vaccine. We're very happy to pay our corporate vaccine provider, which usually administers the flu. So they've got the necessary accreditation and skills. They could administer the vaccine for both our employees and their families. And there's a lot of debate and discussion, particularly I think over the next few months, about how do we scale up the distribution, because as the supply comes online, particularly with vaccines like Pfizer, they need to be used within certain time frames once they're sort of constituted. It actually means there's a lot of work, I think, to actually scale up the distribution, and ultimately you want to make it as convenient as possible for people to be able to access the vaccine. So I think there will be a lot of work both across government and I think corporates in the last quarter of this calendar year in particular.
It'll certainly be a switching focus of where everybody's heading with the vaccine rollout, just ramping it up as quick as we can. So for big businesses like CommBank over the last 12 months, you've had to do a little bit of pivoting and changing the way that you operate. Is that something you're going to take forward, those learnings that you yourselves have had from COVID?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think every employer and sector and geography has been challenged in many ways, in some similar ways. Obviously, the transition about where people are primarily doing their work has been long lasting. Customer behaviours and I guess a structural acceleration to digital. And I think everyone, as we certainly have tried to keep some of the key learnings and some of the positive elements, particularly about what could be done under real sort of time pressure. And again, that's also, you see that across businesses and particularly small businesses, how they've been able to adapt and have been remarkably resilient, across the economy. And I think we're in the current time frame. I think it's about providing from a bank perspective the support to the economy to get through this latest period of lockdowns. But there definitely is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's important for us, I guess, strategically as it is for any business, to continue to accelerate the work that we're doing to better serve our customers in the future.
And some of those banking support mechanisms you've helped to put in place have been including an extension of the similar processes we had at the beginning of lockdown. It's great. Thank you very much for supporting small businesses by getting that across the line and making sure that all the banks were on board with supporting small businesses in that way. It's another welcome set of relief and another support mechanism that's really helpful from the ABA. Just lastly, I wanted to get your forward planning and what do you think is the outlook for the small business sector if we continue to see extended lockdowns? What are your small business clients telling you?
Oh, look, it's clearly very challenging, and and again, not all small businesses are created equally, but those that are really directly impacted, those that particularly suffer, financial loss and waste when lockdowns come and they've got goods that, are perishable. I think businesses in and around the CBD, but not limited to the CBD, are really struggling. And I think realistically over the next, month or so, and, hopefully by the time we get to the back end of this calendar year and the vaccine is, very well progressed across the country, the thought or maybe the transition away from relying on lockdowns as a mechanism to control the spread of COVID will hopefully be, far less prevalent. And then I think that hopefully gives many businesses the chance to then, operate and get back on their feet and performing well. I mean, pre this lockdown, actually, a number of small businesses, and a credit to them for their resilience, actually had very good years, notwithstanding if you went back sort of 15 months, it was really staring into the abyss. But, there's been a lot of stimulus in the economy, seeing consumer and business confidence at record highs, the strength in the labour market, the strength in the housing market. I do think there's certainly, on balance of probability, will return to very favourable economic conditions over the next couple of years. But it must be heartbreaking for small businesses in the meantime. And it's that loss of control and uncertainty, which is, not fun for anyone and very stressful. And, of course, people are juggling personal commitments and homeschooling as well. And, I think the reality is everyone is at various times sort of frustrated. And we've just got to be cognizant and empathetic about that collectively across the community and do everything we can to support each other and businesses get through this period.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Look, thanks so much for chatting to COSBOA, Matt. It's been great to talk to you, get a mind's eye on what's happening in the banking sector, but also a real great overview of what you're seeing happening in the small business space as well. Thanks for chatting to us. I'm looking forward to chatting again about lots of different COSBOA issues and working together with you at the CBA and in your role at the ABA to support small business into the future. Thanks, Matt.
Always a pleasure. Thanks very much, Lexi.